Alright, hello everyone. I'm Justin Diamond. This is the reading of Chapter 10 from my novel Giant Special Tokyo Love and Game. Alright, I woke up with no idea where I was. My only clue was a worm's eye view of the floor, laying on a tatami mat. But the angle was unfamiliar. I sat up, and it became clear that I was sleeping with my head towards the window. Pregnant Sora was still asleep next to me. Usually we slept with our heads towards the wall, but in my craziness of the culture shock of living in Japan, or maybe just because I was crazy to begin with, I had insisted that we rotate the futon mattress every night. I mean, if we weren't going to sleep in a bed, if we had to go through the trouble of folding up the futon mattress to make our bed every day, then I wanted to take full advantage. I wanted to throw myself a curveball. I wanted to sleep randomly with my head facing different directions on different days. And my trick worked. And then I heard another noise. It was my Zen alarm clock which had awoken me. Not a loud electric buzzer like normal alarm clocks. My Zen alarm clock rang an old-fashioned analog bell. The natural, organic sound of a bell was a comforting way to start the day. I couldn't even remember hearing the first strike, the chime that woke me up. The second chime was soft as well. My Zen alarm clock never woke Sora. That task fell to her Keitai on the floor beside her. I flipped a switch to stop the Zen alarm clock from striking again and went to the computer room. Through blurry eyes, I saw that it was indeed 5 a.m. I logged into the world of Warcraft, and while the loading screen was doing its thing, started quietly making espresso in the kitchen. I still had my characters on the North American server, Magtheridon. 5 a.m. in Japan was 7 p.m. on the East Coast. According to the webpage, the guild I played with started their raids at 7. But in reality, they almost never started before 7:15. Once I was logged in and joined the raid, it was like being marked present at school. But since they weren't ready to start, I had time to finish making my coffee while the other raid members logged in and got ready to fight the dragon. I sipped from my tiny cup, typing occasionally to guildmates about how cool it was to be playing on the other side of the world. One guy typed that it would be sweet to raid as soon as he wakes up. In the game, someone opened a trade window with Molokai and got a chuckle out of me when they traded a steaming hot cup of coffee. I typed LOL, and on screen, Molokai laughed as well. Nearly 2 hours of playing time later, I noticed that Sora was up and banging around in the kitchen cooking breakfast. I hadn't noticed sooner because I was wearing my headset over my right ear, the ear facing that side of the house. Normally I wore it over the left ear, which faced the wall. But soon Sora would eat breakfast, and I knew she wouldn't wait for me because she had an elementary school class to teach. I had the luxury of raiding in the mornings because I taught adult classes. And you could only teach Japanese businessmen after they were out of work, at night. It meant that I could still play WoW on my North American account without having to pay real-life dollars to transfer my character over to an oceanic server. After about 2 hours of gaming, the raid was deep into the magical haunted castle of Karazhan. The halfway point was a boss named the Curator, and my guild liked to defeat the Curator before calling it a night. But our 2 hours of scheduled playing time was now over. The raid leaders asked us to leave the raid if we had to go, but if not, we could continue to play for another hour, then stay in the raid and they would see if we had enough players to continue. A few players just left immediately. I could have. I probably should have, but I didn't. Instead, I typed an AFK message, tilted the monitor so that I could see it from the kitchen table, and after adjusting the sliding wooden doors separating the computer room from the dining room, I sat down for breakfast with Sora. All through the meal, my attention was darting towards the monitor. Sora frowned but said nothing. The problem solved itself before she got angry enough to say something. Halfway through my breakfast, I looked up and saw that the raid was over. It disbanded. A glance at the screen, and it was obvious enough. The 10 character portraits of my fellow raid members had disappeared. There were only Molokai and some other guy, probably also AFK, left in the raid. Game over. But even without this distraction, I didn't have much to say to Sora. We finished breakfast in silence, and after I kissed her goodbye, I went back to playing WoW. Server time, it was getting late, and the online population was thinning. So, I did my daily quests solo. Now, an hour and 15 minutes before I had work that night, I left the house. I had become rather comfortable wearing a full suit and tie, and knew that it took more or less 15 minutes to walk to the train station. Usually I'd walk through the streets, but that night I decided to cut through a small park. After teaching until almost midnight, I met up with Donnie for the train ride home. As a rule, I don't like to talk about, drugs with coworkers, but I couldn't help bringing up the topic of weed. We were on the train, surrounded by Japanese businessmen. I looked left and right, guessing that nobody around us could speak English. "I'd love to smoke some ganja," I said. Ganja wasn't my usual word, but I figured it to be a more international word. A word that Donnie, the Australian, would recognize better than Crippy. "I know a bloke you can buy some off of," Donnie said, in his harsh, raspy voice. It was all the excuse I needed to blow off my usual second half of the train ride home from Omiya to Cookie in favor of taking a train ride with Donnie. I had never been to Miyahara. Surprisingly, it was only one stop away from Omiya. Close enough to walk, maybe. "Don't walk too fast, mate," Donnie said, as we were leaving the station just before the ticket gates. "What? Why not?" I asked, as I was touching my Suica to the pad where it made a green light come on, along with a friendly-sounding chime. If anything, Donnie's request probably did more harm than good. But a moment later, with Donnie walking behind me too closely for comfort, I realized what he had done. If you have the right kind of handbag to block the sensor, and if you follow closely enough behind someone else, you could pass through the gates without a ticket, without a Suica, without paying. How many yen had Donnie saved by piggybacking behind me? Sneaking out without a ticket implied that he had snuck into the station when we left Tokyo at Ikebukuro. Maybe 1,000 yen? As much as 1,500? But multiply it by his daily commute, and Donnie was saving a fortune. Using a Suica card, the exact cost of transportation was out of sight, out of mind for me. Donnie led the walk from the station to his apartment. He lived in Leo's Palace. Leo's Palace was the McDonald's of apartments in Japan. They had real estate everywhere, all over Tokyo. Their units were small, uniform, and cheap. But we weren't at Donnie's little hole in the wall, where the sink faucet doubled as the shower head for long. Donnie arranged a deal on his keitai. He looked up from that awkward position with his keitai wedged between his ear and his shoulder, and he asked, "How much you want, mate?" I showed him an Ichiman-en bill from my wallet that, in America, would have bought the amount I desired, a quarter of an ounce. Ichiman, Donnie said. Literally translated, it meant 10,000 yen, but any American or Australian would have seen it more like a $100 bill. When Donnie's phone rang again, he left me alone in his apartment while he met his contact outside. I never saw the deal. Donnie returned with a small bag a few minutes later. Here it is, mate. It's good shit, too. Let's smoke a cone. Smoke a cone? I had never heard the phrase and wondered what it meant. Donnie handed me the bag and I thought it was a joke. Judging by Donnie's face, it wasn't. He was charging me for a quarter and giving me a dime. This tiny dime bag was simply the cost of weed in Tokyo, maybe roughly 10 times what I was used to paying for it back home. Even more curious was the bag it came in. All the weed I had ever purchased came in Ziploc bags. The little nugget of weed I held was completely vacuum sealed, the way goods are sold retail. No zip seal, no reopening this tiny bag. Whatever Donnie was buying, it was from... There was no way to smell it. It was a tiny, perfect dime bag of weed. For $100. What's a cone? I asked. Donnie had found his pipe. Here, give me that, he said. I handed him back the dime bag. You know, a cone. This. Smoke this pipe. Donnie tried to illustrate the point as he broke up the weed and put it in the bowl, and the shape of the loose weed in the bowl conforming to the shape of the bowl was a cone. In America, we smoke bowls. In Australia, I guess they smoke cones. Same difference. I got it. Donnie took a hit and exhaled a cloud of dark smoke. It looked like he might have cashed the bowl with that single hit. You don't look so old. You got kids? No, but the wife is pregnant. I thought he was going to pass the pipe to me, but he didn't. Oh, fuck off. You made a mistake there, mate. Yeah, tell me about it. I didn't really want to, but you know how it is. She looked at me with the test in her hand and such a smile on her face, and, you know, what can you say to that? Donnie made me watch him take another hit of my pot before he handed it to me. Judging by the ash in the bowl, it was now cashed, but I tried to take a hit out of it anyway. Oh, mate, when I met my wife, Donnie said, his accent so thick on the word wife. My ex-wife. She was banging. A professional snowboarder she was. We used to board together, mate. It was the life. Nice, I said, packing the bowl again. We, and I use the word we lightly, had already smoked over half of what I'd bought. But the minute I knocked her up, it all changed. I'm telling you, mate, I gained a son, but lost a wife. I mean, these Japanese cunts, they're different to the ladies back home, hey? I had just taken a small hit and was trying to hold it in, but either I had misjudged the hit or else I simply had no tolerance to smoke anymore, and I coughed when I tried to acknowledge him. Oh, the cunt stopped everything. It's like she became a different person, mate. She stopped snowboarding. Gained heaps of weight. She must have gained 6 or 7 stone. She stopped spreading, too. Donnie said. Spreading? I croaked, still reeling from my big hit. Donnie took the pipe from me, put his hands together before spreading them apart, and I realized he was referring to her legs. Like a light switch, mate. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love my son and all. I see him every chance I get. We sing. It's great. But all I'm saying is, I gained a son but lost a wife. Donnie took another big hit and cashed the bowl. He handed it back to me, all gray and white ashes. Lost a wife, I said. For some reason, I felt compelled to say it with the Australian accent. I repacked the bowl, noticing that once we smoked more, it wouldn't have any. Noticing that if we smoked more, I wouldn't have any to take home. Pass it, mate, Donnie commanded, reaching for the pipe. But I took a hit first. Donnie told stories about smashing people. Alright, everyone, thanks for tuning in this time. I'll see you next one.